My name is Felipe. I'm from Spain, and I happen to live in New York, and I work for the UN as a communications officer. And that's all you need to know about me. I have a cool job. I love what I do. The UN. How many of you like the UN? And let's be honest, okay? Let's be super honest here. How many of you think that the UN is an amazing place where incredible things happen and the world is changed every day? Okay, thank you. Well, how many of you think that the UN is okay? I mean, it's necessary. Let's put it this way. Okay? How many think that the UN should not really be there? It's like, either you change it completely or you better get rid of it because it's not doing much. Really? Not even one? I don't believe this. Really? Oh, melts my heart. Thank you. Okay, one, thank you for the honesty. There you go. So, 1945, the world is in a very complicated situation. The Second World War has ended, and there are good guys and bad guys, right? The victors and the allies and the bad guys. Japan is super bad, Germany is super bad, so no one wants to talk with them. And then all of a sudden the US, the UK, Russia, China, and France, they come to this group, and they say, okay, let's create this United Nations that we're gonna change the world. We will never have another war, for example. But we have a rule. All five of us will have veto power. So whenever we don't like something, we don't talk about it. And whenever we don't really want to talk about something, we will even block it from conversation. How fun is that? How fair is that? So the idea was either that or nothing. All right, I guess we take what we get, right? And 1945 came and passed, and then we are in 2020, and the world is in a very different shape today than it was back then, right? Is the world the same in 1945 that it is in 2020? What is different? How is the world different? 1945, 2020. Oh, come on, you're smart people. Technology, yep. The internet. Globalization. Segregation. Social media. Nuclear weapons. Sorry? Communications, absolutely. Decolonization and colonization. New countries. The world is extremely different. And what happens when you have a 1945 tool trying to implement policies or do its job in 2020? It doesn't work very well, right? Let's say that the challenges that we had in the past were more geopolitical than anything else. We had a global conflict, we had allies and friends, but enemies and people who didn't get along very well with it. And they had like border issues and then political issues, and yeah, that's reality. And it exists today. But move to 2020, and the world is in a very different shape. We have a very new world that has new challenges. And those challenges are more ideological than geopolitical. And how do you fight ideas? Do you think you can bomb an idea? Do you think you can shoot an idea? Do you think that you can just eliminate it with a weapon? Oh, I don't like that idea. Poof. I just use a nuclear weapon or a chemical weapon and it's gone. Doesn't work like that, right? So we all have opinions, and that's the importance of it. We have opinions, but we live in worlds. We literally live in worlds. We have 193 countries that belong to the UN, plus 2-3 observers that are either observers or non-members of the UN or members through another country. And you're going to have as many versions of democracy, as many versions of freedom as countries there are. You don't have one size fits all. The idea of the UN is let's create an entity. Let's come to an organization that we can agree that there are common points. We have common denominators. We have ideas that we can all share, such as life is valuable. We need the protection of the rights and human rights of individuals. We need to all ensure that children also have rights, education, shelter, food. Those are common ideas. Okay, so we can come to some agreements and some compromise. Okay, we can work towards this. We can have a treaty, we can have a declaration. 1948, December 10th, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. 30 beautiful articles that they set the foundation for what human beings are entitled to by virtue of being human beings. Okay, we have one common denominator. But what happens when we have different approaches to those ideas? What about if in certain countries women are not allowed to drive because of cultural restrictions or because they have a different understanding of what the role of women should be in society? How do you navigate those waters? Because necessarily, certain conflicts will evolve to conflict. And that's the summit subject, peace, right? We're going to see how peace is completely different to what many people have been thinking, have been teaching, or even preaching for a long time. Because and again, we go back to the idea of 1945, but when this whole concept of peace came about, it was more like, okay, I don't get shot at, I don't get bombed, I can be in peace and have to remove people from rubble and then just get them out of buildings because they have been bombed. Fine. But in 2020, the UN has been able for 75 years to redefine the concept of peace. And peace implies sustainable development. Peace implies healthcare. Peace implies that you can get an education, and you should have a quality education. That you should also open your mouth and not be afraid of what you're going to say, because the consequences of what the government or anyone else is going to do against you because they disagree with you. So we may have different ideas, and just because I like cats more than dogs or dogs more than cats doesn't mean that I have to say, well, but I dislike you and I hate you, and I'm going to make my life's mission to just eliminate any other ideas. The UN was created knowing that we came from different backgrounds, that we had different understandings of culture, that we have different histories, and that together we can make a difference. We can really make a difference. The idea is, do we really believe that? Or is it just like politicians talking? Do we really believe that we can make a difference from our seats, from your seats, right now? What can you do in the world to make a difference, to make it a better place for everyone? Can you stop war? Can you stop conflict? This is your time. What if I don't need to learn, or I think I don't need to learn anything from anyone? Imagine this. Me, Felipe, a Spaniard, wide, big guy from, Madrid. And I show up in Afghanistan. Anyone from Afghanistan here? No from Afghanistan. Okay. Pakistan? Anyone? Do you see a hand? Oh, there you are. Good. So I think two. Okay. Imagine that I show up in Pakistan and I go to this remote village and I say, hi, I'm Felipe. I'm from the UN. I know. You're welcome. And let me tell you something. Come on. It's okay. It's fine. So I have a plan of action. It's called Agenda 2030. Have you heard of the Sustainable Development Goals? The 17 goals to save the world? Don't worry, I'll tell you all about it because they're going to change your life. They're going to be so much, things much better for you. And the first thing you people, probably someone in the local community was going to say is like, who are you? And what are you doing here? And why are you talking to me? And the reason why is because imagine that I show up somewhere and tell them what they have to do. They're going to say, listen, you don't worship like us. You don't look like us. You don't speak like us. You don't sound like us. And you definitely don't behave like us. So what makes you think that you have the right to tell me how to live my life? In my village, because you have a master plan, because the UN is going to save the world. Go back to New York, enjoy your life in New York, and then leave us alone doing what we need to do, which is our thing. Failure on my part. But I've learned a few lessons with the years. So I'm going to show up in Pakistan, in a remote village, but I'm not going to go to the village. I'm going to go to the local imam. I'm going to go to the local imam and I'm going to say, peace be upon you. How are you doing, my brother? I have something for you. You see, the United Nations came together with the international community in a plan of action. And the points of this plan is called Agenda 2030, but don't worry about the name. The plan has commonalities with the Quran. The Word of God has taught about poverty, eradication of poverty, supporting the poor, the needy, the widows and the orphans. You see, this plan of action wants that every single individual on earth, every single creature of God may be benefited by this. And together, we can do much more. Would you like to know more about this? I would love to just show you what has happened in other places with people of faith that have been able to implement this plan of action because they found that it connects with the Quran or the Holy Scriptures. 2, 3 conversations with that imam. Very likely next time he or she, depending on the world, but in this case it's going to be a he, goes to the mosque and then talks. If he opens his mouth with the same message that I brought at the beginning, but from the position of responsibility and trust that that community already has in it, do you think that they will listen to him more than they did listen to me? Welcome to the 2020 United Nations. We don't want to impose. We have learned many mistakes. What we need to do is we need to understand that engaging in the conversation, bringing the conversation to everyone's level, not just to the leaders. Forget about the prime ministers and kings and queens. Good for them. Happy for them. I hope they enjoy many good doings and they can save the world. I care about the people who really care for the people on the ground. And that is the UN that I believe in. And that is the UN I work for. I don't work for the UN that has like majestic palaces and places. One second. I believe in a UN that truly engages, and for that we need to listen. And the moment we start listening, we realize, holy moly, we got it wrong. We were not as smart as we thought we were. So I don't know if you heard of the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals. That set of goals was not a complete failure, but it's a failure because we did not consult with anyone to come up with them. We learned a lesson. 2015, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, are a compromise and a commitment by all sectors in society. Civil society, member states, private sector, media outlets, everyone together has worked together so we can, okay, now these are the goals that we want to focus on. These are the things that we want to change, but we need you. So for the past 5 years, the first 15 years of this 15 years, 2015 to 2030, we've been promoting the SDGs. I don't know if you've seen these pins. Probably you have. I hope you have seen them at least somewhere around. It's like a rainbow thing, okay? It's a pin. It's the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals pin. And every time I go to church or somewhere, they say, oh, is that the gay thing? Is that like the LGBTQI thing? And well, in part, it is. It includes everyone. But let me tell you about it. It is the plan of action for the United Nations to change the world, to make it a better place for everyone. Everyone. You cannot find one that is not covered. Leave no one behind. That is our motto. So with that, the first 5 years, it was bombarding people. We had, I probably will show you, maybe I'll show you on Friday, a video that we did, that an NGO did for us to promote the SDGs. But we bombarded people. We told them, okay, this is what it is. These are the goals. This is what you have to do. Da, 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 da. Now, as of the 22nd of January of this year, we have implemented what we call the Decade of Action, which is now people know about the goals. What are they doing about them? Because how much do you know about the goals? Do you know anything about the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs? Okay. So tell me one if you want. Tell me a favorite goal, if you have one. And poverty. Perfect. So we know about poverty, right? We know that people live in poverty. Some people live with less than 25 cents a day. I just came back from Kibera. It's the slums in Nairobi. And there's 1.1 million people living in Kibera, okay? Extreme poverty, less than 25 cents, most of them. Extremely happy people, for the most part. Challenges, and they are a living reality of what poverty is. We have seen in the last 5 years, more 15, but really 5 years, that it is through programs like this that people become conscientious of what is going on, that things are not as beautiful, colorful, pinky as people think. And programs like this tend to, with time, motivate individuals to make a difference. You and all of you, I'm 100% sure that all of you are part of that new trending movement that is, okay, let's change the world, but let's do it smart. Let's be strategic. Let's see what we can do, how much we can accomplish, and let's see how much we can change the world without making much noise. And then once we can make noise is when we start expanding the programs. Well, the UN we have been observing, and we have seen how many different programs. We have 1,533 NGOs that I work with. Of those, I would say 60% are active, and 60% are faith-based. That is the motivation behind them. What we have seen is that those programs that have been established for a long time, they're not extremely ambitious, they don't want to end poverty tomorrow. They know exactly the plan of action that they want to have for the next 10 years. Those who rush into it, like how exciting, we have a project I had to finish because I have only one academic year, so I had to do this and then it has to be done, they tend to die afterwards. The idea is, what are you going to do afterwards when it's not a requirement anymore to do what you're doing? Well, I'm not going to ask you, it's just an open question, but I hope that you continue doing something like this. Well, what I'm saying, the world is in a very unique position. You are the first generation that is capable of eradicating extreme poverty. It is possible. How many of you believe me when I say this? I believe myself, by the way. You don't believe that you can eradicate extreme poverty by 2030? We have a problem. And as I said, there are as many individuals, there are as many initiatives, there are as many incredible solutions as people are there in the world. You just need to be motivated. I think that all of you, by virtue of being here, you're motivated. So that you already have for you. What do I think? I think that you really don't give yourselves credit for most of your accomplishments. I think that we have come to the moment of apathy where throughout history, what we're doing is like, yeah, but what? What do you have? You have nothing to lose. In fact, to invest time and energy and efforts in making the world a better place, this is a collective effort. I work at the UN. I landed at the UN by accident. I was not planning on working for the UN or at the UN or with the UN or nothing UN in my life. And I landed because of an internship. And I fell in love with the UN so hard. And I'm not going to make a hero of myself, but I was offered a job 4 times the salary that I make right now in London with tons of benefits, with Facebook, by the way. It was like, ooh, so fancy and all. And I'm not a martyr, but I really thought about it because it was right next to home. I'm from Spain, my family lives in Madrid. I would love to have seen them every other weekend, all that. And I realized I would be working for the money. And do I really want to work for the money? I mean, do I really? I sleep so well at night. Not right now. I have no worries. I have more than I need. My salary is not greatest. It is more than sufficient for me to survive in New York and not having the luxuries, go home once a year to see my family and enjoy time out with my friends and then just, I don't know, have leisure. I'm happy. And I am happy with who I am. I love myself. Maybe I'm very egocentric, I don't know, very like selfish or whatever. I'm awesome. Let me tell you, I'm awesome because I'm the product of who I have decided to become. Because you can do the same. Because you don't need to depend on anyone to tell you what you have to do. Because I choose a career in public service. Because I rather use the subway than a cab. Things like that is, again, I'm not a hero or anything. It's just that defines who you are. And then that pattern will give you the inertia, the energy to continue doing things in that line. And my line is, I love to tell people about the UN and how amazing it is. How without you, let me tell you a secret. The UN needs you way more than you need the UN. Let me say that again. The UN needs you way more than you need the UN. Because there's 75,000 of us trying to save 7.5 billion people on this planet. Just logic says, you're completely off. You're mad. Well, I'm a happy mad person, yeah. But we can do things together. And it's your madness with my madness that we can make a difference. Now the question is, do you truly believe that you can make a difference? Because you have to believe it inside. And I can tell you one thing, again, I'm not going to cure cancer. I'm not going to find a cure for the coronavirus or a vaccine or anything. I'm not going to. That's not my field. But what I've determined is to be the very best version of myself. As you said, I want to be the very best version of myself. And I want to put that into the service of others. And I may not have a yacht or I may not have a palace or anything, but But I have moments, like I had before with the minister, or when I go back home, and I talk to my neighbors in Harlem, they said, and what is the UN doing for me today? Harlem, you have tons of issues. And I said, well, do you have like 2 hours? Because I can tell you tons of things. But that's not the point. The point is that people need motivation, people need illusion. People need to be convinced that they're amazing and that they can really make a difference. And that is what the UN is. It's a place full of people with amazing energy who want to change the world, and ideally. So my first word of wisdom would be just chill, okay? We're not gonna melt, not yet. Second, you have been told the biggest lie probably in the history of humanity by saying, your generation is responsible for this, you better take care of this. Because then you have to respond back, you're still alive, move your ass with all due respect, and then keep working to change things. Don't expect, this whole myth of youth is the future, youth is tomorrow, we need today and yesterday. And because people need to move their boom booms yesterday and today, and they continue working and continue things, it's not about, well, we're gonna wait until 2030 and then we're done, that's yours. And hot potato, it's on you. That's madness. In what world do you think that you cannot use the wisdom and the experience of people who have been around for a long time, and you say, ideologically we're separating. We say, okay, young people can do certain things, older people can do, but together we don't mix. It's like oil and water. Who came up with that idea? Who said that? Who has proposed that the only solution is one that is unigenerational, meaning we cannot cross generation. We cannot just intergenerational agreements. We cannot. What are the immediate needs right now of the world? We have climate, which is one of the impending issues. We have the largest migration movement, refugees and displaced individuals in history. We're over 60 million people all over the place. So that's another crisis. We have another race of xenophobia. Somehow the world has woken up to saying, white people are better than anyone else. Since when? Who came up with that idea? Again, these things are happening in Europe, in my country, with Vox, in Spain. You have in France, you have in Austria, you have in Italy, you have in the United States. This new resurgence of these kind of movements, where do they come from? Are they cycles that happen? Psychologically, how do you justify those things? So that's another impending issue. That's another issue that we have. So you understand that it's impossible to have a peaceful society if you don't have a society that is fed, protected, and taken care of. Do you understand that necessarily conflict arises when you don't have the provision of the minimum needs, basic needs for people? That you don't protect human rights, then necessarily will escalate to conflict. Will just erupt in something. Now, I'm not saying again, don't save the world from conflict. Save them locally. Let me tell you one thing. I have had the privilege of meeting people, cool people at the UN, not so cool people also, not the UN, but you have to meet them too. And yeah, and it's not always the most fun thing. But when you meet these individuals, I find one trait of true leaders. And you're gonna sound, if their parents in the room, they're gonna say like, oh, he's so nice. And you probably think like, he's an idiot. But true leadership is born at home. Let me elaborate a little bit on this. Doing the dishes, getting the garbage out and all that, sounds silly, that's fine. Do it, because it's necessary. And you start the concept of service at home. Please explain to me how you can justify one individual, one person, that is willing to serve millions of people they have never met when they're not able to do the same at home for people they love. The concept of service, it's just the concept of service. Because trust me, service is learned, xenophobia is learned, discrimination is learned, hatred is learned. You can also learn it. You can also undo all the damage that has been done, but that happens at home. At home, or the closest environment that you may have. Some people don't have children, don't have parents, and again, we don't know the situations, but for the most part, we can always go back to a center for where we are at our best, who we are the best. And then we learn these traits. And we learn, again, as I said, service. I cannot imagine President Obama, for example, or my president, just serving people all over the country, all over the world, but then at home just beating the wife or just like not serving or just, again, it's foreign to me. So the reason I'm saying this is because we need to then re-educate the culture around the world on what is important, what are the priorities, and what is that I can do. I may not be able to be the prime minister, but I can help in my community, in my family, and then my immediate neighborhood. And then from a neighborhood, my school, and then an association, and maybe the municipality. Maybe I can become city council member or a mayor. And again, just idea. And then from there you can expand, and you can expand your power, your influence, your circle of influence. And I go all over the place to talk about these things, and obviously, as I said, parents and grandparents, they're like, oh, we love you, thank you, just do the dishes. And other people think, hey, but we're talking about peace. Again, mentality. You will never have a peaceful society unless you have a structure and ordered society. And I've seen it. I've seen moms, like in Colombia, Cartagena, in the Wayu communities, where the mothers are more concerned about educating the kids in good values than them being happy having extra toilet, whatever it is. Just those values are the ones who will generate leaders for the future and leaders today. Those are the individuals we want to nourish. And those are the individuals we all want to be. And I'm sure that all of you are, that you're wonderful at home and that you've done everything, and if you have children, your children are doing the same. But think of this, is the culture of creating a ripple effect in society that will change the world for better. And I know I sound cheesy and maybe is delusional, but start doing that in a society and you will see the changes you will see and how things evolve for the better. And then, of course, those individuals will become diplomats, and they will become prime ministers, and they will become doctors and lawyers and judges, and then justice and all come along because of the genesis was the right one. Let me share something with you, and I'll read you in a second. As I said, I was in Queipo recently, and with UN Habitat. UN Habitat is the urban entity of the United Nations. And something I learned is that we no longer go build a toilet and then hope that things will work out fine. We go train people to become plumbers so that they can build the toilets, so that they can fix the toilets if they need to be fixed, they can have employment. It's sustainable. That's the approach. That has not always been the approach. The approach has been, I have US aid or Spain aid or whatever it is. I go somewhere, I do the project, nice, I take the picture, how cool we are saving the world, and I go back home. Do you know that you cannot eliminate the veto power of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council unless those 5 give it up? How sustainable do you think is that system? A third world situation, a world war, we do not have major conflicts in the sense, but it's because we've been patching throughout history. We've been like, let's fix this now here, and oh well, Syria, it's fine. So China and Russia can support al-Assad's regime because right now it's an internal conflict. So let's go to, well, Israel right now. Okay, let's go. There's so many distractions that make the UN very ineffective through the Security Council to preserve the peace at levels that should already be normal by now. Because the UN was not created for this. The UN was created literally so that the world today would be much better off than it is today. And it is not, because we have fallen victims of leaders and a system that, because it was not created and designed to be sustainable from the beginning, now we're trying to patch it and say, yeah, but if we touch it, it's going to break. And if it breaks, woof, can we afford this? So what is the solution? And it's as simple as for every single country to say, let's pause for a second. Let's think about our people. And let's make decisions. I always quote the same thing, but it's a TV show in the US called Madam Secretary. Have you seen it? Okay. In one of the episodes, Elizabeth McCord, the Secretary of State, she has to read with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if he's the ambassador or it's the minister. And she travels all the way to the Caribbean because he doesn't want to meet her with her. But they had a scare. There was a moment in the day before, in fact, where the US detected 400 nuclear weapons being launched against the United States. And every single thing said, it's not a glitch, it's reality. It's happening. Russia is just dumping all the nuclear arsenal on us. Until the last, of course, like in the movie or TV show, 2 seconds before it happens, they uncovered it's a failure. But that leads the Secretary of State to say, we need to change things because this is not sustainable anymore. We cannot afford this. The problem with the UN, by the way, was the Cold War. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. But that's one of the inflection points where the UN could have changed for the better, and it did not. So Elizabeth McCord, Secretary of State, shows up at the resort where the minister is, and says, we need to talk. We need to, oh, well, you must have a bad day. And one sentence that will stick to me forever from the show, Elizabeth McCord says, we need to de-escalate and we need to eliminate the trigger alert. Meaning, we cannot just have as the first response nuclear, something like that. And the minister of Russia says, Elizabeth, we cherish our children as much as you cherish yours. For some reason at that point, I really understood that this is two human beings talking with interest, with passions, with love, with children, with families who care for the same thing. That have been opposed and have been confronted due to political reasons. For geopolitical, cultural, whatever you want to call it. But they were confronted for artificial stuff. When the reality is that their humanity should have been the one leading the efforts in the peace negotiation. Well, they sat down, they come to an agreement, and they eliminate the trigger alert. In the show, of course, not in reality. What I've seen is that more often than not, human beings want to do the right thing. But either the system, the UN, the governments they belong to, or the current political, geopolitical situation that they have is so complicated that they don't dare to do anything just in case something's gonna break. And that is where you come into action. You need to be brave. You say, we need to think outside the box. We need to come up with solutions that obviously something has not worked well when we are where we are today. But what can we bring to the table? And that is, again, humanity. Bring your humanity to the conversation. Bring the humanity. When I go to Model UNs, I tell them, don't compete. This is not a competition. Can you imagine Russia competing to see who can get the best treaty? Is how do you come to an agreement that everyone benefits from? So that humanity is what needs to be incorporated into the negotiation process. And we don't see that very often because we have different biases and political pressures that don't allow for the true nature of the human being, the true reason for the UN to be created. We, the peoples of the United Nations, is how the UN Charter starts. That is what should be guiding and motivating us, irrespective of faith tradition. My head of the task force that I belong to, Religion of the UN, is a wonderful Muslim. She teaches at West Point. She is an incredible woman, and I have never felt, in some occasions, holier or closer to God than when I am listening to her. And I have no shame in saying that I'm a Christian who believes that faith and God can be found everywhere, including the UN and humanity also. You don't need God at the UN, but an extra help always is pretty good for me, I think. In any case, I hope that we understand that we don't impose, but we need to engage constantly. Otherwise, imagine not talking to anyone.
Excuse me. Just a quick, shorter question. I was curious if you could talk a little bit about peacekeeping operations and their role here, and also why could the UN issue passports to help refugees?
Sorry, could you repeat the question again?
Could you speak a little bit about the role of peacekeeping operations?
Mm-hmm.
And then secondly, I was curious if it'd be possible for the UN to issue passports.
So no, the UN is not an authority, it's not a government, cannot issue passport, it can issue laissez-passer. A laissez-passer is a travel document that is a diplomatic document for UN officials. Two different categories, blue ones and red ones. Red ones are diplomatic, blue ones are just officials. And official passports are only to travel within certain countries. Some countries don't accept them. And you need visas still with them, but it's because you're traveling on behalf of the organization, not on behalf of your nationality.
For refugees?
Oh, you mean, no, travel documents for refugees is a completely different story. Because the situation with the High Commission for Refugees and the agreements that they have with different countries is agreements, and those are called also laissez-passer, but they're different formats. Each country, different countries have different formats. They have like from passports to, again, travel documents, passage documents, asylum seeking documents, and there are as many as legislations there are. My country has its own fair share of documents, and that are not shared by France, or are not shared. There are some in the European Union common, but the US doesn't accept some of them from Europe, in Asia or Africa, due to different refugee camps. So that depends on the legislation of the countries, and the UN, we facilitate with agreements with the member states. Remember one thing, the UN cannot just show up in a country and say, hi, we can operate things here. We don't have the authority. We have to be invited. We are guests. Imagine that you have a plumbing issue at home, your pipes burst, and I show up because I claim to be a plumber, and I say, hi, I'm here to fix your plumbing. You say, well, I didn't call it. Don't worry about it. Just move and let me do it. And I'm going, no, you have certain rights, right? So we observe the same thing. Again, the refugees, IDPs, or internally displaced people, asylum seekers and protection, those are very specific legal situations that each country with common international law agree on. And that's why the refugee camps are sometimes limbos, legal limbos in transition to where and by when. We have people who have been here for 15 years and they haven't gone anywhere because there's no willingness by any country to say, okay, we accept them. Oh, well, we're going to live the quota and we're going to just accept more and more. I wish it was that easy, but no. And people have been kept in camps for decades. Some people have grown and died in camps, and that is not acceptable. But the UN doesn't have the authority to say, we are one world order, we're going to tell you what to do now. That's the last thing that the UN needs to do, and that's the last thing that the UN should really, it was not even invented for that. It was not created for that. It was created to prevent conflict and make lives of people easier. But the world in 2020 is not 1945. And in 1945, they never foresaw how the consequences of the world will lead to 60 million displaced people from the world, and how do you handle them? And we have a new international law situation that we need to come to an agreement, and not everyone is willing to compromise because it coincided with the second thing, which is a crisis, economic crisis. So when there's money involved, things get even more complicated. Peacekeeping missions determined by the Security Council we have MINUSTA, we have MINUSMA, all over the place, and they are post-conflict, ideally for peacekeeping, so that nothing escalates. It has a lot of cultural component to it. It has a lot of educating and really training the peacekeepers. We've made mistakes. Peacekeepers have made mistakes throughout all this and continue doing it. But we are more refined, better trained. The sexual abuses that have happened in Central African Republic and other places, it was a disgrace for the UN. We learned some lessons. Fortunately, we have remedied some of the situations, not all of them, but the situation is much better. Today, the idea is, will people, when they see a blue helmet, feel distress or feel comfort and protection? And our aim is, let us aim so that, at large, is a positive image and not a negative image. But we have challenges.
Question?
Okay, there you are.
Mine wasn't a question. I just wanted to say I was one of the few people who...
I'll go to you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was one of the few people who put my hand up to say that we can alleviate poverty by 2030. And I just wanted to point out, it's important to keep hope. When you look at the statistics of economic development in all these countries, we are, extreme poverty is going down. A lot of African countries are improving they're progressing at a way faster pace than a lot of other countries did in the past. Things are actually getting better. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. Look at the statistics, it's improving.
The data and the math are your best ally for hope.
Yeah.
Because the reality is that, let me go back to you in a second. Let me tell you something about what you just said that I'm very critical. I'm a communications officer, right? My job is to communicate or to speak on behalf of the UN. I am terrified of people and the use of media, to death, because media outlets have moved from being the source of information to source of opinion. And they're so far off from each other that it really leads you to the question, who in the world is moving the strings so that these media outlets say what they say, when they say, and how they say it? Remember that they are for-profit ventures. They make money. They need to make money, otherwise they will not survive. And a purely non-for-profit media does not exist today. The UN News Center, we are super cool and we are completely unbiased. Well, we have one bias. We are humanity biased, so we love people. But please understand that when you consume media, and I will use the US example, CNN and Fox. there must be a God for that, because there's still a balance in that, and they haven't killed each other, destroyed each other. But I cannot believe, and I don't watch CNN or Fox, but I was watching on the plane on my way here on my way from Utah to New York. And I was watching TV and I was changing on the impeachment thing, from Fox to CNN and from CNN to Fox. And I could have sworn, had I not known before that they were about the same guy, Satan was on trial and God was on trial on the other one. All of a sudden I had I cannot believe this thing. Wait a second, let me change back. Because President Trump has another thing to do. And then CNN was, the world is ending and he's responsible. And I am to trust them? People, one piece of advice. Don't trust anyone. No. When you consume media, be wise and consume all. Or at least have a fair balance so that you can come up with your own ideas. Because the world right now is so lazy that all we're doing is okay, I guess Buttigieg, this guy, I like this guy. Sure, they say it's fine, so that's, boom. Our brains are completely melted. They are completely wired so that we do what they want us to do. From entertainment to publicity. Again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but people, be wise. Because again, it's just simple. You are smart people. You are super wise people. When you turn on two different channels and you see such a different kind of material and media, you should be concerned. That's my only thing. I'm not telling you to trust one or the other. You shouldn't trust either. Or do you trust your own smart brain and think, okay, let me see. There are reports on this, yeah. But how many of you take the time to verify the information you receive? I'm going to ask you, but be super honest, because I don't. How many of you, when you see something on TV, say, oh, wait a second, is that true? Let me check. And please don't tell me Wikipedia or Google. Just go to real sources. How many of you really contrast for the most part, most news that you watch? So this is not healthy. This is a problem. And my idea is, thank you, by the way, but one second, my idea is, do that more often and for more things than just whether or not President Trump should be impeached or someone else should do something else.
I
apologize, I made a mistake, so sorry.
All of us, we are advocates of peace. We are ambassadors of peace. And we want to build peace for the whole world community. In the process of that, our priority is helping people in order for us to build peace. It's exciting. We had the side of USA, we had the side of other countries, the battles of social media, and other things that are, socially orientated. In Africa, it's a totally different story. Yes, we can be advocating to build peace through wanting to now, in the process of us wanting to be more social in approach in building peace, we must not forget that each and every time, each and every century, each and every generation has its own mission or its role to play. Now, in us advancing or advocating for peace, we must also look in broader concepts such as empowerment. The current generation, we have the generation which is very energized, the generation which is too close to social media. But you spoke about it. But in Africa, we have the same challenge, whereby social media is there, but people don't understand the importance of the use of social network. Now, as part of our role as peace ambassadors, I encourage each and every one of us from all sections of countries to empower people along the process in order for us to achieve peace. The world is divided. The gap of inequality, which speaks broad about the issues of poverty, unemployment. Now, the more we empower them, we are helping them in the process so that they can also be able to employ themselves, because they would have gained a certain skill from us as peace ambassadors. Let us not wait for government. Let us not wait for department of government that is overcrowded by population in communities of each and different countries. So as we move along, I encourage each of us, each and every one of us, to learn to empower their community, like I did in South Africa. During the matric ceremony of grade 12 students, I was invited to go and speak to them. But the question is, what was I speaking about? Empowering them. Some, they don't even know how to choose careers when they finish in high school. Now you understand the leverage and the privilege of you being a peace ambassador, and also taking it as a step that can make you enhance other activities which will not only speak about social change, but empowerment, assisting communities, empowering them, giving back to communities, speaking about real issues that affect us. Today, I have matric students that know that when they did maths and physics in high school, they can opt for courses such as engineering. They can opt for courses such as health science. We need to start being peace ambassadors that speak not just the concept or the definition of peace on its own, but we have also a responsibility to make that concept to be fed. Thank you.
Let me address the women right now in the room, okay? Ladies. Ladies, do you need to be empowered? You don't need me to tell, what you need me to is get out of the way and allow you to empower yourself, right? Young men, it's the same. You don't need anyone to empower you. There's no one who has anything outside of you that can be given to you that can make you more empowered. What can happen is that I, as a man, sometimes because of history and tradition and culture, I may stand in the way of blocking your way of progression, of empowerment. And that has happened. Again, that's super simple. All I have to do is one thing, just move to the side and let you go. You need help, I'll be able to help you. I'll be happy to help you, but only if you ask for it, by the way. I don't want to force anything on anyone. The UN, the new concept is for women empowerment, by the way, is this concept of, listen, why in a council of like women empowerment and rural communities, whatever, there's 17 men and 2 women. What kind of empowerment is that? It's a reminder. We are majority, right? That seems to be, the rule is with the Secretary General right now, Antonio Guterres, there are more women than men leaders of the UN. So there are more under Secretary Generals, women, than men at the United Nations. It is not a perfect solution, but slowly will trickle down. And it will get all the way to the lower levels. Empowerment is not that, as I said, I give you permission, I allow you to. Empowerment is like, let you do your thing. You need help, let me help if you need me to help you, but don't depend on me. Same for youth, for women, for children, and for men. In some communities, men are not, so whatever the case is, Equality really means equality. Equity means equity. And the work together is working together, and not so much. So thank you for remembering the word empowerment, because that empowerment doesn't come from outside. As you said, it comes from within. And people can change from within, and they can become better, more motivated, and, well, ideally convinced to the idea that we can eradicate poverty by 2030 from within. We've made mistakes, don't get me wrong. But most, I want to take the man of faith in me, most of the blessings that the world has received because of the UN are invisible. We don't see them. We give them for granted. Peace right now. The status quo is not great. Could be much worse. I can tell you that the UN has fought tremendously behind the scenes and front lines. We have lost thousands of people working for the UN in the pursuit of peace. And I can promise you that it was not useless, and that we are enjoying today the benefits. There are certain women in a specific country that as of like last year can drive. That is years of diplomacy and negotiations. The elimination of homosexuality as an illegal activity. Not yet in every country, but we are fighting for that to happen. We may or may disagree with different things, but humanity must be preserved. We will always fight for humanity, for the preservation of life, that at least a minimum tenets, minimum standards that we need to maintain. The UN has been responsible for treaties and agreements on the seabed, on outer space, nuclear development, the non-proliferation, that otherwise they would not have happened. So yes, we've made many mistakes, but our accomplishments surpass the mistakes by so much that in the end, the balance is we are much better off because of the United Nations. Because trust me, when there were two simulations particularly, but one of them not there, like maybe 10 years ago, on the UN. Had the UN not been created or existed the way it was and when it was, with the fear of another war due to the one that we just ended, that it is likely that the population would not be 7.5 billion people today, much less, and the eradication of diseases wouldn't have been possible also because of lack of collaboration. Because at the end of the day, the UN is the only place where countries come to talk. Because it's the only place that they feel they're safe and neutral, so to do it. So let me say that the UN is the best for humanity, that the UN is working extremely hard, that I understand the failures, for the most part by member states, countries, 193 CEOs who don't come to an agreement because of political differences. And those of us behind the scenes working for the UN, trying to change the world, we had to be on hold our breath thinking, will they really defund the whole program because they don't get along? And it happens. And then we had to reinvent ourselves. And maybe UNIFEM disappeared, but UN Women appears. And maybe UNFPA doesn't, but UNICEF can do it, or UNESCO can do it. I mean, we will do the impossible to continue doing our work, because I'm not clinging to a paycheck. As I told you, I can make much more money somewhere else. But the ideals of the UN are the most important driving force. As I said, I love myself because I love what I do, because I become the individual that I wanted to become, and because I have the job of my dreams, which is I get to, as I joke with my mom, I save the world one NGO at a time. So I just tried to help one NGO to be able to establish a program, to develop it, be with the YU women in Cartagena, and whatever it is. But please, please do not lose hope in the UN. I know we've made mistakes. I know we have failed many times. And I know that we're imperfect. There's nothing, but please, because if, as I said, we need you more than you need us, and if that's true, and we start failing in that and we don't get your support, we're doomed. And I don't want a future without a UN. Not the way I know the world it is. No, I know how people deal with each other, and knowing how much we need places like this where we can talk. As I said, talking is just 50% of the success. So allow us to at least continue bringing people together. Whatever happens afterwards is beyond our hands, but at least allow us to bring, because we made mistakes, as I said, but we've done also a lot of good. Motivate yourselves. Change the world. Go ahead.
So I'd have to agree with what Edmund said. I think this whole idea of peace, in a sense, it starts with listening and talking, just like you said. A lot of us don't want to sit down in the room and talk about these hard things because we want to put them into action. But it starts with listening first before we can put those plans of peace into action. But I think one thing that we forget is that peace a lot of times starts with our communities and the grassroots level. And a lot of us, sometimes we come from communities like myself, I come from Hawaii, and our community isn't having war or harsh genocide going on in it right now. But there are some of your communities that you're here from that you have seen that before. And so it starts with our communities. None of us experience that. And so when we're talking about the culture of peace and being able to be sensitive to that, we've never been through it, so we don't know how to be sensitive to that. And so I think just thinking of Edmund and the man that spoke from South Africa this is the perfect place. We're literally all here from like more than 60 places. All of you have a problem in your community that needs to be fixed, including mine. And I think the perfect place to start is for us to network with each other, and the people who are on the ground facing those problems, we need to learn from you. It's not us learning, or it's not us telling you what to do and how to fix your community, because I'm not from South Africa, I'm not from Kiribati. Who am I to go to those communities and try to fix it? It's you telling me how to help you where I am in the world right now. And I think that's one thing we need to remember is we can help only so much, but the people who are from there, you can help the most. You help your people the most. And so I just encourage all of us to be sensitive to that and to remember that not all of us have experienced that type of hardship, and we're all here to achieve peace and helping each other.
Thank you. And I have like 30 seconds. So the idea is you are here at your house, by the way, the UN is your house, ideally so that you can learn not only from each other, but also from within yourself. Sometimes we don't listen to ourselves when we have ideas and we have approaches, and the idea is, okay, let's see how far I can get with this. Second is just please understand that, and I say this with the utmost respect, many times we're wrong. And when we're talking with someone and we know that we're wrong, we tend to be a little bit like, yeah, but I don't want to acknowledge that I'm wrong, so I'm wrong. This is the perfect place. The UN is I cannot emphasize this enough. This is the perfect place to be wrong. This is the perfect place so that other people can see the humility we were talking about, that is, we are not always right, we don't know everything. This place is not holy ground. This is not where all the ideas come together and they come ideas, a treaty that will save the world, because it's not like that. But your contribution, your little piece, is what is going to make a difference. So please, enjoy this place, enjoy this venue. This is a place where many people have sacrificed a lot to be able to, for you to be here today, for us to be here today. And just think of all the hardships and all the struggles that the world has gone through and endured to get to this point in time, so that you have the privilege of building a better future from now, moving forward, and it's in your hands. So to be able to do this here, there's almost 400 of you out of 7.5 billion people in the world. This is a true privilege and a huge blessing for you to be here, and for me too. And hopefully we can, again, with our brains together, come up with solutions. Until then, I'll let you just dialogue and find the best, again, in whatever I had said that it may not have had an impact. Ideally, you will be able to at least come with one conclusion, which is the UN is here to help, and the UN is really in need of you. Thank you.